Hello, WhatsOnStage listeners. It is Alex here. I have just wrapped up an interview with Mason Alexander Park, who is about to star as Ariel in Jamie Lloyd's production of The Tempest at Theatre Royal Drury Lane. We wanted to know more about what to expect from this new production of Shakespeare, as well as what it's like moving to the UK, as Mason recently did. I think I can almost remember exactly where I was when I got an email announcing the full cast for The Tempest, joining Sigourney Weaver, and your name was on it as Ariel, and I just thought, oh, the elements come together that they've presented one of the most interesting Shakespeare roles with one of the most interesting performers of our time.
Oh, wow.
How did this come about that you were going to be on the Theatre Royal Drury Lane stage as Ariel, directed by Jamie Lloyd in The Tempest?
Oh, well, thank you, first of all, for saying that. Jamie and I had been talking about other theater projects that we're both passionate about and wanting to collaborate on something moving forward, because Cabaret was such this amazing experience, an amazing introduction to the theater community here as someone who lived in America previously and was in love with the idea of performing on the West End. It was such a nice open door for me afterwards. So Jamie and I were kind of looking for maybe the next project that I could do after that show. And this kind of randomly happened. I think during one of our meetings, he was just sat there and apparently had this epiphany where he was like, Mason would be a great Ariel, but he chose not to share that with me. And then told me that he got Sigourney Weaver to play Prospero and asked if I'd come to the office and talk about doing Ariel. And so it really just kind of came out of nowhere, and it's not something I ever thought that I would end up doing, but everybody else seemed to think it made sense. So it's one of those things where if enough people around you are like, yes, that's a great fit, and you absolutely have to do it, you kind of go, okay, maybe I should do it then.
It's funny that Ariel as a character feels like they're in many ways a bit of a paradox, because, they're described as delicate by Prospero and yet bring on this huge Neptune-esque Tempest to start the play. How has that been to dive quite literally into that?
Well, it's fun because I guess when you think about the extremes that Ariel can stretch to, many of those are in service of a desire, of a want, right? They desire freedom. They want to please Prospero in order to achieve freedom. And so the extremes that they go to create this tempest and the fear that creates and the torment that they essentially put people under, as well as when Ariel reappears in the play as the harpy. There's many frightening moments where they show off immense fury and immense power and passion. But what's fun about that is all of it is sort of for a noble cause in their mind. It's all, not only is it redemption for someone that they have become entangled with, someone that they are serving, but it's also for their own quest, their own heroic quest for reclaiming their freedom, which they haven't had for a very long time because they were imprisoned even before, Prospero came around. So I think it's fun to be able to play this delicate creature, this delicate presence that is pressurized and put under such extreme asks and needs, and thus shows off other colors and other extremes of their personality.
And how are you finding that in the rehearsal room? What are the triggers that allow that to come out?
Well, one of the really fun things, I guess two things about this rehearsal process that are remarkably different from other ones, is that Jamie asked all of us to come in off book, and we have had sound in the room since day one. So the entire room has essentially a surround sound speaker system, and we are mic'd every single day and get to experience the oral world that we're building as well, which I think helps with character creation in so many ways. And I think a lot of the reasons that Jamie really insisted on that is obviously you go through a tech process and then all of a sudden there's so many additional things, and you were building this performance in a rehearsal room that's now meant to be in a theater that has 2,200 seats. So vocally you're going to start shifting the way that you perform, and you're going to be hearing yourself in a way that you weren't hearing yourself in the room. And so this way we don't have that surprise. So we actually all collectively as actors are able to really stretch and go to absolute extremes, whether that's incredible intimacy, whether you're really putting no vocal energy into something because you're able to bring it down that low, or getting remarkably loud and hearing the distortion that they can put on our voices and hearing the reverb and all of the different tricks that they can kind of play to help create the magic of the world. So it, I think, instills a bit of fearlessness in the earlier part of the process, because we're playing not only with our imagination, but also with certain theatrical tools that you normally don't gain until a week before, you're performing for the public. So if we have ideas in the room now that are oral ideas, if we have ideas that are about, the sound of things, like those are things that can be implemented weeks before we're even in previews.
So our listeners won't see this potentially, but we are currently at the Jerwood space, and your rehearsal room, I think, is probably one of the largest in London. It's a huge canvas. I mean, that must provide so many opportunities to play as well and just use that space.
It's really amazing. I've never been in a rehearsal room that large outside of New York City. Yeah, it's cool because it matches the scope of what we're doing. Drury Lane, as you know, is cavernous. It's remarkable, the size of it, and how we're utilizing that size is really important to the play and really important to everyone's vision. So I think being able to rehearse in a space that also feels grand and has really, has height to its advantage is very helpful in a way of not surprising us once we go into that space in, I guess 2 weeks from now or something. And it's just going to be absolutely massive.
I remember when I think I was doing interviews for Cyrano de Bergerac, which is one of Jamie Lloyd's previous productions, and I think the designers, what they'd been subtly doing was looking through what costumes or what outfits people were bringing to rehearsals and then using that as the point of departure for the costumes that they'd be wearing on stage. What's the aesthetic vision, obviously without giving too much away, but what's going on there?
Well, everyone in this cast is incredibly fashionable, but the designs that, we saw the drawings day one, and I'm not sure how much they're going to shift throughout this process, but they're really heightened. I think the look of it is so gorgeous. And what I'm wearing is not something I could ever even replicate in real life. So at least I can tell you from Ariel's perspective, I will not be in any sort of street clothes that match my own personality, which is kind of annoying because, not at all. It's a remarkable costume and I'm so excited about it. But when you think about certain shows where people are wearing more street clothes or high fashion street clothes, and you think, God, I bet they want to take that home with them after the show is done. And they could actually wear that jacket or they could wear those shoes. I always get caught in shows where I could never take anything. Number one, because they build them all. My costumes are always built from scratch. I never get to wear something that was procured or acquired from some warehouse. And then they're just they're not usable. I think the closest thing maybe that I've worn in the last few years is I could probably wear my shoes for most of my characters, but that's about it.
I feel like you could rock an Emcee outfit on the streets of London.
Just walk around in that clown outfit in the streets of London. That'd be hilarious.
I think I remember one time I was applying for a job at the Royal Court about 10 years ago, and I'd been doing a student show at the Edinburgh Fringe, and I needed to look presentable, but I didn't have a suit. And this was sort of late August, so towards the end of the Fringe. So I had to borrow one of the costumes, travel down to London, wear it for the interview. I think I bought a tie from M&S and then wore it. And then went back to Edinburgh. Didn't get the job, but
worth it.
Worth it for the costume. Yeah, I was doing some deep diving research into The Tempest, and obviously it was back on in 1958 at Theatre Royal Drury Lane. And I think Brian Bedford was playing Ariel, who is the voice of Robin Hood from the Disney and a sort of Shakespeare legend. But, I love a Disney film, so that's probably why that was my main citation. But that must be pretty cool, stepping into, those historic shoes at a historic venue.
Yeah, there was such a magic to theatrical history and to lineage, and I've been really lucky in my career to be able to play parts that I think have such a magical history to them. You think about the remarkable actors who have played the Emcee over the last, almost 60 years or so. You think about all the people who've played Hedwig and all of these roles that mean the world to me. It feels really special. It feels like you're invited to be a part of a club where you get to, reimagine or personalize these really remarkable characters. And I realize that that's not everybody's experience. And it seems to be a hyperfixation of mine now, where I don't think that I have had many theatrical experiences where people can't imagine, one or two other major names when they hear the name of that role. You know, you hear Frankenfurter and everyone immediately pictures their favorite, whether that's Tim Curry or someone else. And I think that's cool. It actually, I find it quite liberating. I think I had to find it liberating at some point because it really could kill you. The comparative aspects of it could really get you in your head. But I think it's really fun that there are these performers that have been so impactful in so many different ways over the course of a piece of theater's life, and that they are linked to that piece forever. Because then it gives you people that you can kind of admire and go back and look at and appreciate what they've done, and then go, great, that was done, and it was done brilliantly in that capacity, and they did the absolute, best version of what they do. Now I can do my own thing. Or if you have some natural overlap and there are isms and things that you both kind of benefit from, like there is an art to borrowing certain aspects of things that do work beautifully. So it's kind of finding that balance of creating something that's original without being too hyperfixated on the people that did it before. I feel very lucky that this role is another one of those where, everybody has an Ariel, I think, in their head.
I think that's one of the most exciting things about the role is that because almost Shakespeare is so non-specific about what Ariel can be, it means that you can take that and run with it, or the production can take that and run with it. So you mentioned borrowing and sort of finding inspiration. What have you borrowed from, and what inspirations have you used to find your Ariel?
I think it's all been text-based, mainly for me with this. I haven't seen many versions of The Tempest in my time, and there was a part of you that goes, well, I could watch, really sit down and watch the Julie Taymor version, really sit down and watch some of the ones that are streaming online. And then there's a part of you that wants to kind of keep that a mystery, to separate yourself enough that you can really just remain text-based with something, I think, as non-specific as Ariel. I think that there is something useful in that for me. So with the task of everybody coming in off book, that really created that is your homework. It created a very clear, this is what you need to do before you get into the room. And so much of Ariel's existence is based on the symbiotic, codependent relationship with Prospero. So I really wanted to remain as open and kind of blank slate as I could coming into the process, because I don't necessarily know Sigourney. Now I do, but, day one I didn't. And I don't know what our relationship's going to be. I don't know how those two characters are going to interweave, because they are so dependent on one another. They can be at complete odds, or they can be completely on the same team. And so much of that can be played with based on the pair of them that are playing. And that's what's fun. If you dive into all the different people who've played it, there's so many different reviews and deep dives into their relationship personally from production to production, and people having really cool experiences with how different you can play those characters, because how badly does Ariel want to be away from this person? How badly does Ariel actually want to continue this relationship, but also craves, a sense of singularity and freedom? There's so many levels to the play that is supported by its actual openness and non-specificity that I think really allows you to stretch it in a lot of different ways.
Am I right in thinking this is your first professional Shakespeare?
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's terrible. Yeah, doing my first Shakespeare at the Drury Lane is only filling me with mild anxiety, but it'll be fine. It's not quite like your first crack. You know what I mean? It's a bit dramatic. I was it's a bit much, but I'm really looking forward to it.
Go big or go home.
Exactly. I'm it's either going to be, I don't know what it's going to be, but you can't be afraid of taking those risks, because it's very easy to build up a wall around Shakespeare, especially as an American. I feel like the idea of doing it for the very first time here in London and a theater that big with this kind of cast and this kind of director, very easily could make me want to hide under my duvet. But I'm actually quite inspired and excited by it, because the whole point of it is that it should be an accessible art form, and it should be an accessible author. This is someone that everyone should be able to experience and learn from. And I think that because it can be held to such an amazing standard, sometimes it can put you in your head, and as an actor, you can be fearful of it and go, well, I'm never going to be, you're never going to be Sir Patrick Stewart. There's such a heightened beauty to people's expectation of doing Shakespeare here. And so I'm trying to be at ease with it and really be galvanized by that instead of scared of that.
Well, there's such a common refrain that performers say, they want to take on roles that do challenge or scare them, because otherwise they'd just be reheating the same thing every time.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, besides it being Jamie and it being Sigourney, like that was another major thing, just the challenge of it and the idea that even if you fail, like you're going to learn and you're going to grow spectacularly in any process in which you are made to do things that you haven't done before. So so much of it is worth doing. So much of it is worth trying.
So have you now relocated to the UK? Is that a life change? Wow.
Yeah. I had been doing the back and forth for about 3 years because I first came out here to shoot a television series for Netflix called The Sandman. And that's been going until just a few months ago. I think we finished the second season of Stories. So I've always felt like I've had a base here to some capacity. And then when I was asked to do Cabaret, that was the longest chunk of time that I had ever been in London at once. And it was such an eye-opening experience, because I think you can easily trick yourself into thinking, oh, I love this place, but it's only because you're there for work, and it's only because you're there in these short little spurts. But to live somewhere for, on and off for over 3 years, really, I finally felt like I had enough. I wasn't tricking myself. Yeah. So Cabaret really, really changed a lot for me. And once I finished Quantum Leap in, I think, February of this year, my partner and I decided that it would be nice to be here.
Nice.
Yeah.
I was going to move on to The Sandman. In fact, you play the role of Desire in The Sandman, and I absolutely adore the season. I think I'm one of those Netflix watchers who kept rewatching the season, had it on in the background to push the algorithm to be like, guys, you need to renew this show. Look at all these viewability figures. This guy's staying on it all the time. And so, I was trying to play my tiny part in making sure that you get renewed, because it's such a brilliant, fantastic show. And in fact, another elemental role that you've got, Desire and Ariel, there must be a similarity between slightly different strains of that.
Yeah, different extremes. No, there is such an overlap. There's quite a lot of overlap in a lot of the roles that I've been fortunate enough to play, because even the Emcee, I would say those 3 parts are sort of non-human. They're concepts, they're anthropomorphic personifications of things. They are non-tangible at times. Like there is a mysticism and a magic to sort of being able to play characters that can both be characters in a story and also pull themselves outside of it and represent an idea or represent a point of view, and then go back to being, in the form of like a character. It's really can get quite fun and heady, and it feels like the ultimate form of slipping around as a chameleon. But yeah, there is a lot of overlap there.
It'd be fantastic seeing you in a kitchen drama next week.
I know, yeah. I would love to just play someone's partner or child, or just play a tangible human being.
Yeah, I'm going to slip off this mortal coil into some abstract third realm.
Exactly.
So you literally did straight from Cabaret into filming Sandman and now into this.
Yeah, so I was doing Sandman simultaneously with Cabaret. I would go and shoot Sandman sometimes during the day, and then hop in the car and they'd drop me off at the stage door, and I'd go and do the play at night. And that was so much fun. That was like the greatest gift in the world, to be able to. They were both projects I had really cared about for a very long time, both projects that have been in my life for a while, but then to kind of watch them, collide in that way and get to be, there was something very old Hollywood about it, like something very 1960s New York. I'm like, I'm going to go and film my movie during the day and then head on to the theater. Like it was just silly. And it energized me in a way that a lot of things haven't. So I did that, and then went straight back to the States to go finish Quantum Leap, and then came back here and thought I was going to be here for a little bit, but I just got back from a small stint in America. I went back to LA to do Deaf West Theater, did a production of American Idiot, and they asked me to come play St. Jimmy. So I kicked that off for a couple weeks.
It's going to be very fascinating watching Sandman season 2 thinking, oh, what bits of the MC, or like having seen your MC now,
Yeah.
so like seeing how the flavors of that might bleed from one project into the
Yeah,
other?
yeah. I haven't actually thought about it yet, because in my head, there's such an interesting divide. The MC was a role I had played before about 5 years ago, and it was one of the pieces of theater that really pushed me to study theater. So I feel like I had such a deep history and such a deep appreciation of it for a very long time that it's an easy skin to slip into. It's something that's been in my periphery for over a decade. And so it's not that challenging to kind of just put that, little hat on and take it off at the end of the day. And Desire was similar. So much of it was just playing the objective, playing the action with Tom Sturridge, who plays Dream on the show and is one of the most brilliant actors that I have ever had an opportunity to play opposite. I think the ease of both of those jobs really made it easy for me to keep a mental separation. But I say that now, and then I guarantee you if I ever end up watching, like bits from season 2, I'm gonna be like, oh, that's me doing a little bit of the MC. So yeah, it would be interesting, I guess, to know if anything carried over.
Are you the kind of performer that religiously watches yourself back, or do you sort of leave a project in its box?
I think it depends on the project, because there are some projects I'm a big fan of, like the Sandman, and that was one that I really wanted to watch, whether I was in it or not, kind of a thing. But no, I've only seen it once, and then if I get tagged in, like silly little clips or things, I've seen my bits a few times because of the internet and because of the way it works when like someone's putting, something on Instagram and tagging you in it. But other than that, I probably would have only seen the show, I think, once through. But I think I've seen most of the things I've been a part of once, except for I have yet to see the last like 12 or 15 episodes of Quantum Leap, just because it wasn't in this country when it was airing. So I never got to see it when it was actually on TV. So that will happen one day, I think.
Circling round to the MC, it was so brilliant having you and Maud Apatow together, inheriting these roles that ever since Eddie Redmayne and Jessie Buckley have become almost staples of the West End now. They have a premium status as two of the most wonderful existing roles, and still being performed to this day, and there's probably many years to come. And you say you've also won awards for playing it before. So what was it like you mentioned slipping back into the skin, but in a new production that's sort of like the familiar yet the unfamiliar at the same time?
It was fun. I had a very limited availability. It was something we had been working on for a minute. I was originally meant to do it sooner than I ended up doing it, but Quantum Leap kind of got in the way. And eventually it all worked out. I got to do it with Maud. It was so much fun. But I was only able to do, I think, 2 weeks of rehearsal going into it. So I was very lucky that I had played the role before because, when you watch the show, the MC really is just songs. There is very little book for that character. And I think that's a good thing. That meant that coming in, because I know all the songs, they're all very ingrained in my head. They're not going to be very different version to version. That's half the work done. Now, the main thing was figuring out the choreography and figuring out the staging and how that kind of intersects with Rebecca's vision for the show, because this version is really unique and really hyper-specific to its setting and to the theater that they've built. So that presented, I think, the main challenge was just, okay, we're in the round. I've never done Cabaret in the round. I've actually never done any piece of theater. Like the closest was a thrust, kind of a 3/4 thing. And it felt like returning to something that you've known for a very long time. But thankfully, I think the limited amount of time made me hyperfixate on get the moves down, get the physical world down. You understand the character and you understand the songs, and hopefully all of that will come together and it'll be okay.
Did it sort of seduce you to some extent about the idea of doing musicals in the UK in the West End?
Oh God, yeah. Yeah. It is a major factor, if not one of the biggest reasons why I have decided to be here as long as I possibly can, submitting for visas and all that kind of stuff, because I think that theater is so valued in this country, and the kinds of people that came and saw Maud and I in Cabaret, it was shocking. It was a staggering list of remarkable artists that both of us admire and I have adored probably, our whole lives. People that I can't imagine ever seeing my work in a million years, that made the effort to see that show because of the the value that theater has here. It as much as Broadway is remarkable and amazing and is such a feat to accomplish as well. I find that if those same exact people came and saw us in a show in New York City, it would all be dependent on like PR people smushing us together to get pictures with them, because that was the reason why, they were there, rather than it being, there were certain like insane A-listers that were sending me messages on Instagram saying like, I read a review about the show or a friend told me about the show and I bought a ticket and came and saw it and just wanted to say X, Y, and Z. And that's insane. Like people, hearing about something and taking the time to do that rather than it being, I think it's just very different than it is doing theater at its highest degree in the States. So that was one of the big things that made me go like, holy shit, people actually like deeply, deeply, deeply understand the value of theater in this country. Even the people that are visiting it. It has this allure, it has this magic and this incredibly like honorific, this heightened nature that is really staggering to be a part of. So I felt really compelled to spend more time here. I felt really moved by how the theater community here, it took Maud and I in during our tenure, and the way that that's continued on. And I feel a part of the fabric of something which I hadn't necessarily felt in many ways back home.
It's so important, I think, and also thinking about audiences that may not yet love theatre, finding that love for theatre. I remember seeing Jamie Lloyd's Romeo and Juliet, and obviously there'd be hundreds of people in that auditorium being like, oh, Spider-Man's in this. I'll go and see some Shakespeare for the first time at the age of 15, 16. And now they'll say, oh, now there's this cool new production of The Tempest with all these wonderful people in. And the Jamie Lloyd Company has been incredible in providing so many access schemes for tickets. I think there's about 25,000 for The Tempest at £25.
Yes.
I mean, that must be so lovely knowing that you're going to be someone's potentially their first Shakespeare of hopefully a lifetime's of Shakespeare.
Yeah, I think that is kind of the brilliant, people can have varying opinions on the way that the theater has shifted just as an industry, and in a way that like oftentimes it can't be supported without you having these sort of crazy grandiose ideas of, okay, which massive name can I draw people in with? But that sort of existed in its own way throughout time, throughout theater history. You are always in conversation with how do we entice people to attend? Because if you're not playing to that, like you're gonna not end up getting people to come and actually support the theater. So I think that what Jamie and this company have really found is such a brilliant, like, really intellectual, creative way of inviting people into a theatrical space, utilizing really remarkable actors, people that are like at the top of their game, that are enticed because of how brilliant Jamie is as a director and how brilliant the company is as a whole, to create something that then becomes hopefully accessible for, younger people and first-time theater goers and people that, don't attend theater often to feel compelled to, get a ticket and see Shakespeare or see a musical or whatever that might be. So it is a really exciting thing to get to be a part of. It feels like it's all with a really with a common goal in mind. Everybody just wants to create something beautiful and something magical that can hopefully not only entertain, but galvanize and attract people to continue to attend. So yeah, it's fun to be doing it in this way.
And then one final question for anyone who might have seen The Tempest before. What do you think they won't have seen in this version of The Tempest without giving too much away?
I think there's quite a few things that will be hopefully very different in a surprising and moving way. I think that what we are finding in the room, there is such an intimacy and such a magic to this piece. It has the ability to make the viewer or even the people within it feel more human for some reason. There is something so remarkably human about this piece comparatively to some of the others that draws me to it the most. It's that aspect of it that I find I'm immediately like pulled emotionally by. And I think that because of the way that it's being presented and because of the way that the technicalities of it are supporting us, and the concept and Jamie's, whole. I feel like he's constantly, with all of his work, really investigating the text and really focused on how do we get people to hear what the intention is. How do we get people to actually hear what the author wrote in its most clear and highest level? And I'm finally hearing The Tempest. I feel like this has to be the first Shakespearean thing that I've been adjacent to, that I have felt completely engrossed in, and like I understand what's going on beyond just, my basic understanding of it, where people are saying things, just moment to moment, that I'm like, holy shit, I didn't realize that like you could actually say it that way, because we're taking off the pressure for it to become performative, because even though it's a massive space, we're being supported with those mics in such a way that like the story can be communicated in so many different ways, and it is really exciting. So I think that audiences will hopefully hear it in a way that they haven't heard it before, and hopefully experience it in a way that they haven't before, because it'll feel like it's all around them and holding them in that space.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Mason Alexander Park, for enchanting me with a fantastic interview. I cannot wait to be in Drury Lane, soaking up everything that you guys do. I think it's brilliant to have plays at such a large space and showing people the huge canvas that Shakespeare can be played on. So no, thank you for taking the time on the WhatsOnStage podcast.
Thanks very much.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the WhatsOnStage podcast. Make sure you like, follow, subscribe, and leave a comment wherever you can. See you next week.